The wind sighed through the high passes of Glen Mor, carrying the scent of frost and damp earth. Cian, a wolf whose gray fur bore the silvery sheen of moonlight and the deep scars of countless winters, stood sentinel on a rocky outcrop below him. The valley stretched, once vibrant with the howls of his kin, now a vast, echoing silence. He was the last. The weight of that title pressed upon him heavier than the deepest snow. He remembered the thunder of paws across the frozen loch, the shared warmth of the pack den during blizzards, the fierce joy of the hunt beneath a full moon. Now only ghosts remained, whispered on the wind that ruffled his thick mane. His amber eyes scanned the familiar slopes, not for prey, but for an absence that ached like an old wound. The loneliness was a physical thing, a hollow beneath his ribs that the cold mountain air couldn't fill. He descended the treacherous slope, moving with the silent grace ingrained in his bones, past the skeletal remains of ancient pines clawing at the sky. Every stone, every bend in the hidden trails, held a memory. Here was where his mate, Alara, with eyes like molten gold, had cornered a great stag there, beneath the overhang slick with moss. His 3 playful pups had tumbled over each other in the soft ferns, their tiny yips music in the crisp air. He paused near a cluster of rowan trees, their berries long gone. This was where the men had come with their thundersticks and sharp, biting metal that glinted coldly. Under the sun, he remembered the terrible cacophony, the panicked scattering, the final, defiant snarl of his brother cut short the silence that followed. Was worse than any noise. He lowered his massive head, a low, rumbling whine escaping his throat, unheard by any living kin. Hunger, a constant companion now, gnawed at him. Prey was scarce and wary. The deer had grown cunning, avoiding the old wolf paths, and the rabbits seemed to vanish like mist. One brittle afternoon, near the peaty banks of the Black Loch, Cian spotted a young hind, separated from her group. Instinct flared, sharp and primal. He gathered himself, muscles coiling like springs beneath his fur, the ancient drive to survive momentarily eclipsing the grief. He stalked with infinite patience, using every scrap of cover, every whisper of wind to mask his approach. The chase was short. Desperate as he closed in, the hind stumbled, her eyes wide with terror. Cian lunged, but his jaws snapped shut on empty air just inches from her. Flank exhaustion, not age or lack of skill, had betrayed him. He watched her bound away, the missed opportunity a bitter taste in his mouth. He turned, padding wearily back towards the high crags, the emptiness settling around him. Once more days blurred into a monochrome existence of searching, resting, and enduring. The signs of men grew bolder. A euro, not just the distant echo of their thundersticks, but fresh scents of metal and smoke, the sharp tang of traps cunningly hidden near the remnants of old deer trails. He found one, its cruel jaws snapped shut on a rotten branch. The cold iron smell filled him with a dread deeper than hunger. He remembered the piercing shriek of a younger wolf caught years before, the frantic struggle, the awful finality. He gave the trap a wide berth, his hackles raised. They were pushing deeper, these men, claiming the last wild corners of Glen Mor. His refuge was shrinking, the walls of the valley closing in, not with rock, but with the encroaching shadow of a world that had no place for him. One frigid night, under a sky ablaze with countless icy stars, a new scent sliced through the familiar dampness of pine and frozen earth. Fire, not the comforting warmth of a distant hearth, but the hungry, crackling roar of wildfire, fanned by a cruel, dry wind gusting down from the northern peaks. Panic, a sensation he rarely felt, surged through Cian. The fire was distant yet, but the wind was its herald, carrying the unmistakable promise of destruction. He ran, not with purpose, but with the frantic energy of pure instinct, seeking the highest ground. From his lookout, the horror unfolded. An orange-red line, like a malevolent serpent, crawled along the opposite ridge, consuming the dry heather and gorse. Sending plumes of choking smoke high into the night, sparks danced like malevolent fireflies on the wind, leaping across ravines. Glen Mor, his entire world, was burning, driven by a terror deeper than any memory of men. Cian fled downslope, seeking the dubious shelter of the valley floor near the rushing river. The air grew thick and acrid, stinging his eyes and lungs. The roaring grew louder, an all-consuming beast devouring the night through the smoke and swirling embers. Near a cluster of large, smoke-shrouded boulders by the water's edge, he saw movement. Not deer, not men, small, huddled shapes, wolf pups, 3 of them, whimpering and pressing against the cold stone, utterly lost and terrified. Their mother was nowhere to be seen, likely overcome by smoke or fleeing in blind panic. They were tiny, perhaps only a few moons old, their gray-brown fur matted with ash. The sight struck Cian like a physical blow. He saw his own lost pups in their wide, frightened eyes. The hollow ache within him flared into something else, a fierce, protective surge that drowned out his own fear and exhaustion. Without hesitation, ignoring the searing heat radiating from the advancing wall of flame, Cian bounded towards the pups. They shrank back, whimpering louder. He nudged them gently with his massive muzzle, herding them away from the boulders and towards the riverbank where the air was marginally clearer. A fallen tree spanned part of the churning, ice-cold water. He urged them forward with low, rumbling whines they instinctively understood. Nudging the smallest one, who faltered one by one, they scrambled across the precarious bridge to the relative safety of the far bank. As the last pup cleared the trunk, a burning branch, torn loose by the inferno's fury, crashed down directly onto the log, shattering it and sending fiery debris into the water. Cian was trapped on the burning side. The pups cried out, huddled together on the dark, cold bank. Cian looked at them, safe across the water. He looked back at the roaring flames engulfing his valley, his past. He raised his great head towards the smoke-obscured moon, hidden but present, and poured forth a final, resonant howl. It wasn't a howl of despair, but of profound, fierce love and release. A song for the valley, for the lost pack, and for the tiny sparks of life shivering on the far shore. Then the flames closed in, and the song of the last wolf faded, leaving only the crackle of fire and the rushing water, carrying the promise of a fragile future across the dark river.